Welcome to the Inspiration North podcasts, inspiring stories from inspirational people and how they found their passion, their true north. I'm James Eves.
And I'm Michelle Minikin, and this is the Inspiration North podcast.
Today's episode, passion, positivity and persistence with Michael Grahamslaw. We talk about his childhood dream of being a journalist, being thrown into the deep end at the age of 21, and his passion to develop a magazine which showcases the best of the Northeast.
Michael is Managing Director of Northern Insight magazine, a regional publication which provides a window into Northeast business and cultural life. The magazine gives local business a voice as well as showcasing the opportunities present in such a vibrant part of the country. Michael himself has 3 decades experience in the industry and has transcended print and digital eras. On the eve of the magazine's 54th edition, he talks to us about an eventful life in the media.
Now then, Michael, can you tell us about when you were a little boy and did you actually know what you wanted to be?
Well, it seems a long time ago. Well, I suppose it was. My first recollection of wanting or childhood ambition was I wanted to be a journalist. Mm-hmm. And that was probably from about the age of about 10, 11. One of my minor claims to fame was I wrote a magazine. I don't quite know where, when I look back, where I got the title from, called Off the Wall, which I wrote longhand and I sent to the Evening Chronicle. Never thought anything of it. And then one Saturday morning, my mum rushed onto the school field where I'd been playing in a school football match. And she says, "Son, you've got to come back to the house. There's a reporter from the Chronicle coming out. They've got the magazine and they want to interview you." And, well, I wanted basically the ground then to open up and swallow us. And anyway, this lady came out at lunchtime, interviewed me at my parents' house. Funnily enough, the lady who interviewed me then went to work on to JMTV after starting at the Evening Chronicle, so she obviously moved on, but that's another story. But I did this interview. I think from recollection, I was still in middle school. I think I was 11 or 12 at the time. That was the Saturday, and then it was published in the Tuesday night's Chronicle. Then the Chronicle was still broadsheet, and I got more or less like a quarter page. I've still got it somewhere. And the stick that I got at school on the Wednesday was, there's one particular line in it. It was my hero at the time was a lifelong Newcastle United fan. Chris Waddle was my hero.
Yes.
And the quote was, "I want to be a journalist when I grow up and interview people like Chris Waddle." And and I was never allowed to forget it.
When you're seeing Chris Waddle, Michael.
So that was my initial ambition. I mean, I'd always had a love of books. I was a voracious reader in those days, and I still am to a degree. What happened was I stayed at school. I did A-levels. I got reasonable grades, and I was going to go to Birmingham University. Actually, had a place to study English and drama. I decided to take a year out, and here I am on my 30th year out. Because what happened was, I thought, well, I'm going to have to find work for the next year. And it shows how long ago it is now. I remember going to the job centre, and I saw a job advertised for a telesales executive at the Newcastle Chronicle and Journal. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, if nothing else, I can talk. I got that job, and that was the first rung on the ladder, if you like, of a career in advertising, sales and media, and something that I've loved and enjoyed ever since.
Mm-hmm. So that was ringing people up to sell space in the paper. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, what's happened was the Chronicle at the time had a motors magazine called Auto Weekly, which was a direct competitor to the Auto Trader. And I started, ringing somebody up. You've got your car in Auto Trader. Would you like to advertise it in Auto Weekly for 3 weeks for the princely sum of £12? Mm-hmm. And I remember it was just a part-time role. Quite Americanized way, really. I had a whiteboard with everybody's name on, and you had to log your sales. Quite brutal, actually, when I look back, for some people who obviously didn't do as well as others. So obviously that was the private sales team which I started on, and that was a trade team who worked through the day. The boss of the whole thing, if he's listening, I would love to mention a guy called David Rees-Jones. He came. It was a great media maverick, great guy, David, and he came in one night. I think he'd been for a couple of beers after work, and he came back into the office. He said, could Michael stand up, because I'm thinking in something like a 2-hour period I'd got 38 sales. And he says, I think you need to come to see me. And I went to see him the day after, and he offered me an 8-week trial with the trade team, and then selling to garages and motor dealerships all around the region. I passed that with, I suppose, flying colours, and you know, David, hard to believe now, but he celebrated by pouring 2 tots of whiskey. He had a whiskey bottle in his top of his desk. He toasted my future career, and it's something that I've never forgotten. I've never forgot the fact that he really put me on the way. And I felt very blessed, because no doubt about it, I'd fell backwards, you know, into something which I've managed to carve a career from. I think when I look back, although obviously I've done it, you know, in the game that I've gone into, I've probably done a bit of a hybrid role at times. I've done a lot of writing along the way, a lot of reviewing, but I don't think that side would come as easy to me as the selling, the meeting, and the nurturing long-term client relationships. And as I say, I feel very blessed, because it was really just by chance that I found the job and then made a success of it. So
did you skip university then, or did you follow that through as well?
No, I skipped Birmingham University, and then what happened was I started a degree at Sunderland University. I used to, by this time I was working on as I say, I got moved to the trade teams. That was working full time. I couldn't drive at the time. I used to get the train down to Sunderland on a Monday and Tuesday evening to start my uni degree, and I never really took to it at all. I think when I look back now, again, and with the benefit of hindsight, I think I probably did it for the wrong reasons then. I mean, my sister was a teacher. I think I had a little bit of I wouldn't say yes, potentially a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I think my father, perhaps, I never thought my father felt I had a proper job at that stage. In the world of selling, which is obviously had a stigma over time. And when I look back now, that was completely in my own head. That couldn't have been further from the truth. That was all, that was just, 20-year-old angst, I think. To answer your question, yes, I did go to uni, but I didn't finish my degree. And I think if I'd had the passion for it, I would have completed it. There's no question about that. But I was enjoying what I was doing. And obviously that's the path that I've stayed on over the last nearly 30 years.
Okay, so taking you back, you had done really well in your first job. You got promoted and had did you get to taste the whiskey as well, or is it just him?
I think I did, yes. But funnily enough, my son is different, because he likes whiskey. I've never really been a whiskey drinker. My late father liked whiskey, but
it skips a generation then.
Yeah. When I look back at those days, they're worth nothing but fondness, because I met in that early stages. I was dealing with the motor trade, who were a great bunch of characters and people to work with. And I was only 18 years of age when I started, and it was fantastic. When I look back, tremendously character building. It made me grow up very quickly, because you're dealing with all walks of life, and it was great fun.
So what came next?
I then left there, and basically over the next, let me think about this, actually 20-year period, I worked for a local magazine. I then went on to become a partner, at the time a very successful independent media publishers, local media publishers. And that was a roller coaster, really, when I look back. I mean, it's important to say before I go on to that when I first left the Evening Chronicle, I went to work from there, which had been weekly press, to working in the monthly world, which I've been in and existed in ever since. The magazine that I joined was you couldn't have got anything further removed, really, from what I was working on. With the Chronicle role, it was very much, I dealt with some real earthy characters, some used car dealers. I mean, I keep using that word characters, but that's my recollection of those days. And I then went and worked, as I say, for a long-standing monthly magazine, which was family-owned. So I'd gone from working for a big corporate company to a little family-owned business where there was only a tiny team. Me and the boss handled all of the advertising side, and then he was backed up by we had a designer, and he had a PA. And what happened was when I first arrived, my boss was ill actually which very sadly for 3 or 4 months. And by that stage, I was 21. I was very much thrown in at the deep end, and I was actually in effect running the advertising side of the entire business at that tender age, dealing with an absolute raft of businesses, going from building societies to ladies' boutiques, to luxury car dealers, to restaurants, to hotels. And again, that was tremendous experience. There is a long-standing client of mine. I'll not name him, but if he's listening, he'll know who it is. Mm-hmm. I remember pitching up at his office, and he always tells this tale that I walked in. I'm assured, I'm not sure I have now, but he assures me I was quite fresh-faced at the time. Mm-hmm. And he thought I was the paper lad, and I'd actually turned up to sell him some advertising space. That was an amazing, again, the depth of experience, you couldn't buy that. It was thrown at the deep end. It was sink or swim. I think fortunately, because I was so young, I didn't really have much time I didn't have any time to think about it. The other thing to mention is that I'd recently married. I had to make a success of what I was doing. When I look back now, that really gives you a bit of fire in your belly to want to do well. I wanted to do as well as I could. I had my first house. And again, that was great. And then what happened was I then went from, I was there until I was just turned 30, and then between the ages of 30 and 43, I was a partner in an independent media company, which was a roller coaster. When I look back, we had various magazine initiatives from property to business to leisure. We had some highs, and then we unfortunately had some lows as well. I mean, the business took a huge hit when we hit the recession of 2008. For a multitude of reasons, the business ultimately and sadly failed in 2015.
Okay, so what happened next?
Yeah, how do you go from a place like that, which is you put your life and your heart and soul into something, and then it's not quite worked out? What do you sort of go through as a process after that?
I like not to look back too much, but obviously it is a part of the journey that I've had. But it was a very difficult. That was a very difficult time in my life. I can't talk today without mentioning this. I lost both of my parents in the early 2014, which I can't begin to tell you what effect that had on me. And then the business, which had some issues for a long time, as I say, ultimately failed. So I was faced, and if you'd said to me even 5 years before then, certainly 10 years before then, any of this would have happened, I wouldn't have believed you, because I was doing extremely well. As I say, I never in my wildest dreams thought that I'd have any issues, which I subsequently had. But so what happened was I was left. I was 43 years of age. I'd never been out of work. I actually got me first. What I didn't say was I got my first job about 10 days after finishing my last A level. So I was out of work myself, and it was. If I'd given it a chance to think about it, that was potentially very frightening. But what happened was, it was amazing, because within about a week to 10 days, I got 3 job offers, all from people that I'd worked with or known through the industry. One in particular was a particularly lucrative offer, and would have been a real challenge, and I was incredibly flattered by that. But I had always harboured ambitions to have a magazine solely on my own. Which I could shape myself, and which I could direct myself and nurture and develop. So I very quickly decided that I would give this a go. I had the working title of Northern Insight, which I have to be honest with you now, I think I came up with the Insight name myself, and I think it was actually, I thought you would put Northeast on it, and I thought, well, I thought Northern had quite a nice ring, and I think it was actually my mother-in-law, when I look back, who thought of that. So that's Northern Insight. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go. Obviously, I had a big, book of clients and contacts that I'd made over the previous 25 years, and it was just something in me that I felt that I had to do. I mean, I couldn't have done any of it without the support of my wife Lisa, who was, you know, it was amazing, you know. But I think she, you know, believed in me, and that was, you know, you can't put a price on that. And so I thought, I'll give this a go. And I thought I knew in the very early stages as to whether it was going to work. So basically, I started knocking on the doors, as I say, of people that I'd worked with and that I'd met before, and you know, and I had a huge bank of clients and bank of people that I knew. Rather fortuitously, a lady who I worked with in the 90s, who had been out of the industry for a while, bringing up a young daughter, contacted me, wanted to just get back into the publishing world, and she was the first appointment that I made as my designer, and has been with me ever since. And as I say, I set away the old-fashioned way, you know, going to see people. All I had was the working name of Northern Insight. I didn't have a fabulous, you know, 5 to 10 year long business plan. I just had a passion to want to develop a new magazine for the Northeast, which showcased, you know, the best of the region, be it a big business, a small business, and, you know, some inspirational stories. Anyway, I managed from date of my first meeting to launching the first edition. I did it in a 48-day time period.
Oh, wow.
The one thing when I think back about that, when I was going through a bad time personally and professionally, you feel as though you're the only one in the world who's, you know, you can get very cynical and down on life, and you feel as though you're the only one in the world who's ever been through anything like that. And when I went out, and I was very candid with everybody I spoke to, and people were amazing, because, you know, that in the vast, I reckon in that initial 6 to 7 week period, I did probably 100 to 120 meetings, and I reckon out of those meetings, probably 95% of people that I spoke to, they had a hard time, that had difficulties, that had ups and downs. I don't think there's anybody out there who's got a business who hasn't experienced something, and I found that tremendously cathartic. So I managed to launch issue 1, as I say, within 48 days. The hardest issue I've done, and bear in mind we're now on issue 54, was issue 2, because it was, on your own. It's a bit of a psychological thing. It felt a little bit after the Lord Mayor's show, but we've got an issue 2 out, and then it's just snowballed from there. We've, as I say, the magazine's grown now from a staple 100-page edition a month to now we're 200. Our Christmas issue, which by the time this is broadcast will have gone to print, will be 212 pages. We've got a terrific online platform, great social media support, and I can't begin to say how flattered and amazed I am at the support that I've had. So
it's wonderful. So it's that sort of the resilience is what's striking me. You know, you literally hit rock bottom, and just the ability to just pick yourself up and just plough on. It's amazing, really.
I think if it was one of those things, if I'd stopped and taken some time out, I think I potentially might have lost a bit of confidence. I mean, I hadn't done anything wrong. I thought, I've got to just get myself back out there, because you literally become yesterday's news. So I never really thought, well, I've got to be resilient. I just did what I felt as though I had to do. I had to keep working. Obviously, I've got a family, and I think particularly if my late father had been around, he would have said, look, you can't feel sorry for yourself, son. You've got to get back out there, And as I say, the support that I had was nothing short of phenomenal, really. It was, and still getting. It's been just a great, from where I was to where we are now. That's not to say if we all have our daily challenges, but it's been a great journey, and hopefully some great years to come.
I'm just laughing at daily challenges. It's like literally getting everybody dressed and out the house to need where they want to be. It's just hard.
Yeah,
So
it's the same in my house, and my son's 23.
Oh, brilliant! There's no end in sight. Then mine's about to turn 10.
So you'll read about it in me publishing memoirs somewhere along the line. So
exciting. And you do a couple of monthly lunches as well, don't you?
Yeah, well, one of the things that So the magazine I've got now, it's a a small team. I front run it, operationally day to day, supported by my wife, my son and daughter both have an involvement, which is lovely. And then I've got Louise, my designer, who I mentioned earlier, and then a team of about 3 or 4 very trusted. I wouldn't like to use the word associates. They're all friends who've supported me, all of them really from more or less issue 1. And without their support and their closeness, as I say, that means the world. But yeah. So one of the things I'm very aware of is obviously we're a small team. I can only do so much. So I was very lucky to get an invitation from a former client of mine, a lady called Linda Hipman, who heads up a thing called Exclusive Business. And Linda wanted to launch a monthly networking lunch. And would I like to get involved as the media partner? And so yes, I've that's an initiative that I've been involved with for about 2.5 years now. And we host a lunch a month at Jasmine Dean Hotel, one at Wynyard Hall, and we have a speaker at each one. And that's been a great way for me to make new contacts, to obviously for people to gain more awareness of Northern Insight. And, again, that's been a lot of fun, along the way. We've had some terrific speakers. I mean, we had earlier this year, Sir Peter Vardy, who was amazing, talking about his journey. And that's been a lot of fun. And that will be carrying on certainly well into 2020 and beyond.
That's exciting.
It is. One thing always intrigues me with printed magazines is there was kind of a trend a few years back when like Amazon released a Kindle and everyone's listening to audiobooks, and that the thinking was that print was less popular, but then there was a resurgence in book sales and people actually miss connection with like a physical book or a magazine. And what's kind of been your experience with Northern Insights from that trend?
Well, I'll go back to when I was 18 years of age, and I started in the newspaper world. And newspapers, never mind locally, nationally, internationally, are really struggling day to day for circulation and sales. And I'm very saddened by that. I'm from the era where I can remember leaving Thompson House at 6 o'clock on a weekday evening, and you could buy the Chronicle at the top of the big market and read about the player Newcastle United had signed at 2:30 at Scotch Corner Hotel that afternoon. Now obviously times changed, and as I say, newspapers are struggling. And I mean, I still get 2 newspapers a day. I think I get the love of that from my late father. I think my son has got the same, but I know there's a lot of people now who just look for their news online. I do think there's a difference. I think there is still, I mean, on a personal level, I think, I love newspapers, but I think there's a massive place for high quality, high end, monthly or quarterly magazines or periodicals. I think you've only got to, go in any W.H. Smith's to see the amount of it amazes me the amount of titles that there are. And there's new ones being launched all of the time, and I think people like to buy magazines, and they might not read them all in one sitting. They may just flick through them over the course of the month. And I don't see that. If anything, I see that's strengthening as we go along, and let's hope it does. But genuinely, I really do feel as though I wouldn't do it otherwise. I think there's still a huge place for quality print.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I did some work with the BPIF, the British Print Industry Federation, and I remember they do some quite cool infographics where it showed return on investment of different media, and print, which surprised me, was actually a higher return than if you're applying money into TV advertising or radio or something similar, like pay-per-click stuff on Google, etc. And it's interesting to see that change and that trend, and that people see the value of something physical in a digital world, isn't it? Sounds like an 80s song or something, but
it's a material world, isn't it?
That's the one, yes. Material Girl, is that Madonna? But you know what I mean? It's a sort of there's a definite value there of it's actually sitting down in a world which is all sort of scroll, click to the next page. To actually, it's almost being more mindful if I give it some sort of modern relaxed type concept, but to sit down with a magazine or a newspaper, it makes me think of my dad. Actually, he'd get the Telegraph or something on the weekend, and he'd be sat at the back, would have a pot of coffee, and would talk through some of the articles. And it's almost reflecting more on the news and what's happening, and the articles, and there's almost a romance attached to it. I don't know. I think my great grandfather, he used to work for the Sunderland Echo in like print setting, and my great uncle, he worked at the Boston Globe in the States, and same sort of thing. And there's that romance attached to printed medium, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, my first boss who gave me the break earlier. I mean, I keep saying this word, but you know, the newspaper world that in magazine what I originally started in was just full of characters, you know, and it's I for a personal level I find it quite sad now that, you know, it is diminishing, but I still really do feel there's a place for it, you know.
Yes. So I'm reflecting on some of the themes that have come up, which is from your earlier career. Telesales within advertising, that needs a lot of persistence, and you mentioned earlier as well the word passion, so 2 P's, isn't it? Persistence, passion. So how would you describe kind of what keeps you going? Why each edition is sort of, I'm looking forward to the next one, and then we're coming up to Christmas. So what is it that kind of, how would you describe all that?
Well, I always equate it to, and I do see this, my son would back me up on this, it's like playing 12 cup finals.
Mm-hmm.
I look at each magazine as like genuinely, I know that's not as like a cup final, you know. It's I think where I don't feel as though, despite the ups and downs I've had along the way, one thing I have never lost is the enthusiasm and you said the word, James, passion. I love magazines, and all I want to try and strive to do is on an ongoing basis is get better. It's quite, an old boss of mine used to say to me, Mike, it's like painting the Forth Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And it is like that, because you start one magazine and you normally something how it feels at times of what you've got to do and the workload you've got to get through, and then you get, and it all comes together is tremendously satisfying. And then it's just like a cycle, really. And then, you know, your magazine will come out, and then you'll get, you know, hopefully some nice kind comments about it. But funnily enough, in my own head, I've always been the type to, you know, and this is genuine, to look forward, because, you know, people say, you know, yeah, current mag looks fantastic. That article looks great. That picture page, and in my own head, and I don't wish this to sound the wrong way at all, but it's not meant to, but it's gone. It's you know, you know, I don't. If you came to me house, I don't have, even though I've probably worked now. I mean, I'm on issue 54 of Northern Insight. If you factor in all of the other magazines that I've put together over the years, I think would be comfortably into 4 figures. Mm-hmm. And I don't have. I've got all of the years of Northern Insight. I don't have. I've very little of what I've done in the past, and that's because I like to look forward. Mm. And I've got some tremendous memories. You know, tremendous stories, tremendous memories. But to me, it's all about looking forward, and that's where the drive comes from, to try and. That's the challenge that obviously I have, and we all have in business going forward, is to sustain what we do, make it better, and this isn't done enough, but try and have a little bit of fun along the way. And I do think for any business owners, anybody listening, that is very important. Try and enjoy. We all have our frustrations, our ups and downs. But try and enjoy it, because it's if you can do that, you're halfway there.
Yeah, it's on both of our websites. It's on both of our companies, isn't it? That the fun.
Corporate value for Insights Business Psychology.
It's fun.
And then part of the core mission for Inspiration North is to have fun. Otherwise, it's kind of, if you're not enjoying it, what's the point? Yeah.
Need something else.
I mean, I don't mind somebody putting on my headstone, you know. Had a bloody good time along the way, but got the job done. But hopefully not for a while yet.
Well, I always admire your ability to juggle all these different meetings, and there were some really nice photos of you've had a night stay in some cool place or some really nice looking food.
Oh, it's the food pictures that I always look at. It's like, ooh, we need to go there.
It's a dirty job. Somebody's got to do it.
Sounds awful.
Yeah. I think it was 9 stone when I started in this job, but never mind. Yeah.
So looking forward at episode 54, you've got a rather special interview in there, if I do say so myself.
Yes, the 2 pages of inspiration, North words and wisdom. So, and 2 of 212 pages of packed with insight. So, so yes, we've got the first editorial contribution of many to come from Inspiration North. So it's great to have you on board. I think there's a lot more in there besides for the readers to enjoy.
Yeah, we can't wait. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, Michelle's sharing her insights into the business psychology world.
Yeah.
It's always fascinating stuff, how the mind works and how you relate that to
definitely
to business and the like. So.
And yeah, I think sort of 2020 is going to be a year of working together as well. So we're all trustees of the Pie Project now as well.
Yeah, I mean that's quite a recent thing, I think, for all of us. Our mutual friend and long-standing client of mine, Amar Mirza, invited me to be a trustee of the Pie Project at the start of this year, and I know Michelle, you and James are in the throes of joining us. And that is something I'm very proud to assist with. I've worked with Amar for many, many years, and all of the various things that he does. And the Pie Project is terrific. And we really hope to, to grow that and grow awareness of it through 2020 and beyond.
That's exciting. We've got our first board meeting.
Yeah.
Next week. This week.
If you're listening to this now,
yeah,
that's part of what we're going to help with as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get more schools involved, get more volunteers involved, or pioneers, as they're known as. That'll be exciting.
Yeah, it's another challenge for all of us, but I'm sure with the people that we have on there that we can all pull together and make it very successful going forward.
It's exciting.
So talking of children and helping people raise aspirations and the like, if we could take you back to 18-year-old Michael and you could give him some advice, if he would listen, what do you think you would say to him?
Well, it's quite funny because, that's 18-year-old Michael in many ways seems a long time when it was, but in another way it seems just like yesterday. But I must use this analogy that, and people who used to work with me in the early 90s would relate to this. I used to be an absolutely horrific timekeeper. Going back to Evening Chronicle days, they used to actually have a late book, and I would be 9:05, 9:07, 9:17, 8:51, because clearly that was the day after I'd got told off. And at the time, I couldn't. I was doing really, in terms of the business I was bringing into the company, I just thought, well, this doesn't add up. This should just look at my sales figures. And of course, you realise as you grow and you develop and you employ people yourself that you've got to have some kind of, if you can, benchmark. So so to answer your original question, what I've really realised, particularly in the last, I think, probably since my parents died in particular, is that. And it is a cliche, but time does fly by, and I now have gone completely the opposite, and much to the amusement of my daughter in particular. But I don't like to lie in bed, and I don't like to oversleep now, and I don't think I ever have done for a long time in a working context. But I like to try and make the most out of each day if I can, genuinely. I'm sure I've become a bit like my father in that regard, because my father was always like that, a 5 or 6 hours a night sleep man, and so I think that's what I would say to me, self, is just appreciate genuinely how quickly time goes by, and most importantly appreciate it, and enjoy it.
So wonderful.
Very good advice.
Yes, it is. Okay, so if somebody has listened to this podcast and really thinks, oh, I need to get in touch with this Michael, how's the best way of doing that?
The easiest way to get hold of me on a day-to-day basis is just via my website, which is northern-insight.co.uk, and all of the relevant contact details are on there. And as I said earlier, the whole ethos of the magazine is to promote the Northeast. So I like to work with big companies, small companies, individuals, and help people as much as I can. That's what, as I say, what the ethos of what I'm about is and what the magazine's about.
Wonderful.
Great stuff.
Well, thank you ever so much for
Yes,
joining
thank
us
you.
on this dark and gloomy morning.
Yes, no problem at all. You can probably tell I've got a face for a podcast as well. So. Many thanks. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Check out all the show notes at inspirationnorth.com. Join us again for the next episode when we'll be chatting to another inspirational person. If you like this, subscribe and tell your friends. If you didn't like this, subscribe anyway.
And tell everybody.